Hey guys, tonight we are heading back to the summer of 1858. To the very heart of the largest, richest, and most powerful city on earth, London. Picture yourself there now, standing on a bustling street corner. The air is thick, not just with humidity, but with the smoke of 1,000,000 coal chimneys, the dust kicked up by 1,000 horse-drawn carriages, and a low-lying aroma that is, well, let's just say it's complex. You're breathing in an atmosphere that is part industrial fog, part brewery, with just a hint of a petting zoo and a backed-up sewer. Frankly, with your 21st century immune system, you probably wouldn't last a week before succumbing to something with a delightfully Victorian name like the ague or jail fever. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I love seeing where you're all listening from, so feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you is the sheer noise. It's a constant, rolling thunder of iron-shod wheels clattering over cobblestones, the rhythmic plopping of countless horses, and the shouts of vendors hawking everything from fresh oysters to bootlaces. This isn't the London of quiet parks and polite queues you might imagine. This is a city bursting at the seams, a frantic, chaotic engine of an empire that stretches across the globe. You are just one soul in a sea of over 2.5 million. All crammed into a space that feels impossibly small. You pull the collar of your coat a little tighter, even though it's summer, a subconscious gesture against the sheer press of humanity. The fashion of the day doesn't help. Everyone is draped in layers of heavy wool and cotton, trapping the heat and the city's signature scent close to the skin. You decide to walk, to try and make sense of this overwhelming place. Every step is a small adventure in navigation. You dodge a speeding hansom cab, its driver perched high above, skillfully weaving through traffic that seems to follow no discernible rules. You sidestep a pile of horse manure, an unavoidable feature of the urban landscape, given that tens of thousands of horses worked in the city every single day. It was their version of traffic commissions, just a bit more organic. You see men in top hats striding with purpose, their faces set with the serious expressions of commerce and politics. You see women in voluminous skirts, skillfully navigating the crowded pavements, their faces hidden behind delicate veils, perhaps to filter the grimy air. And everywhere, you see children darting through alleys, their faces smudged with soot, a testament to a city powered by coal. The air itself is something to be reckoned with. It's a hazy, yellow-brown concoction the locals call a pea souper. It's a mixture of Thames fog and industrial pollution, so thick at times that it brings the city to a standstill, turning midday into a murky twilight. It stings your eyes and coats the back of your throat. This constant smog is the price of progress. The visible sign of London's status is the workshop of the world. From factories in Southwark to the countless domestic hearths, the sky is a canvas for the city's relentless industry, and beneath this blanket of smog, the city's more immediate smells fight for dominance. The yeasty aroma from a baker's oven, the sharp tang of vinegar from a pickle shop, the metallic scent from a blacksmith's forge, and a faint, ever-present undertone of decay. It's a perfume of progress and putrescence, all mixed together. You see incredible wealth on display. The shop windows along Regent Street are filled with wonders from every corner of the globe, fine silks from China, intricate clocks from Switzerland, precious jewels from India. This city is the financial capital of the world, a place where fortunes are made and empires are run. Yet, just a street or two away from this splendor, you can peer down a narrow, dark alleyway and glimpse a completely different reality. Here, families are crammed into single, unventilated rooms, and the concept of sanitation is a distant dream. Historians still argue whether the high mortality rates in these areas were due to the bad air that the Victorians so feared, or to malnutrition, or to the contaminated water that we will soon get to know much better. The prevailing wisdom, the great fear of the day, was that disease was spread by miasma, by the foul smells themselves. And in a city that generated this much filth, that was a truly terrifying thought. They believed the stench itself could kill you. A little joke for you. Their idea of a health tonic often contained enough alcohol to make you forget you were sick in the first place. As you continue your walk, you feel a magnetic pull drawing you eastward, towards the city's ancient artery, its very reason for being. The road begins to slope gently downwards. You notice the buildings are older here, leaning against each other as if for support. The air changes again. The general city grime is being replaced by something more specific, something wetter, and infinitely more pungent. You are getting close to the river. You hear the mournful call of a steamship's horn echoing over the rooftops. You see watermen in small, sturdy boats, the taxis of the Thames, calling for fares. And you smell it, long before you see it. It's a heavy, cloying scent of primordial ooze and chemical waste, a smell that hints at a profound sickness lurking at the heart of this great city. This is the River Thames, and it is, for all intents and purposes, dead. You take a tentative step closer to the embankment wall, a low stone barrier separating the street from the river. The smell intensifies with every inch. It's an ancient, complex odor, a smell of mud and salt and something else entirely, something man-made and deeply wrong. You look down at the water. The River Thames of 1858 is not a river in any sense you'd recognize. It's a sluggish, brown-gray soup. There is no clarity to it, no hint of the gravelly bed below. Instead, its surface is an oily, viscous film, intermittently broken by floating refuse, dark patches of industrial effluent, and bubbles of gas rising from the depths, popping with a faint, sighing sound. These bubbles are the river's ghosts, the gaseous remains of all that has been thrown into it, a cocktail of methane and hydrogen sulfide released by the putrefying matter below. A dead dog drifts by, its form limp and swollen, spinning slowly in the current. It barely registers with the locals. This is just what the river looks like now. But let your mind drift for a moment. Let the noise of the city fade and imagine standing on this very same spot. Not in 1858, but perhaps 2 or 3 centuries earlier. The air is clear, crisp, and smells only of wood smoke and damp earth. The river below you is wide, sparkling, and so clear you can see the shimmer of scales as a school of salmon makes its way upstream to spawn. This was the Thames that Londoners knew for most of their city's history. It was the source of life. Its water, drawn upstream from the worst of the city's runoff, was what people drank. Its bounty, from salmon and trout to eels and oysters, fed the population. This was a river so central to the city's identity that its tides and moods governed the daily rhythm of life. Watermen, the legendary cabbies of the river, plied these currents in their thousands, their calls echoing across the water, a familiar and vital part of the city's soundscape. The river was so clean, in fact, that during particularly cold winters, it would freeze solid. This wasn't a thin film of ice, it was a thick, stable platform that could support the weight of thousands of people. And when it happened, Londoners threw a party. These were the famous frost fairs. Imagine it, the river, a frozen highway from bank to bank, covered with tents and stalls, an entire temporary town erected on the ice. There were printers with their presses, printing souvenir cards for visitors. There were pubs on the ice, serving hot gin. There were ox roasts, puppet shows, and even, during the Great Frost of 1683 to 84, an elephant that was ceremoniously led across the frozen surface near Blackfriars Bridge. It's a wonderfully absurd image, a testament to a healthier, more vibrant river. It's also a sad one, because by 1858, the river is too full of industrial waste and raw sewage to freeze properly anymore. The impurities have lowered its freezing point, a morbid kind of antifreeze. So what happened? How did you get from elephants on ice to the floating horror show of the 19th century? The change was slow, almost imperceptible at first. It began as London grew. More people meant more waste. More industry meant more pollution. The tanneries on the South Bank dumped animal hides and toxic chromium into the water. The slaughterhouses bled carcasses directly into the river's tributaries. The breweries, The dye makers, the chemical plants, they all saw the Thames not as a living ecosystem, but as a convenient, free, and infinitely patient conveyor belt for their filth. Out of sight, out of mind, historians debate the precise moment when the river's ecosystem collapsed beyond recovery. Was there a single year, a single decade where the damage became irreversible, or was it a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts, a gradual poisoning that had been underway for generations? By the time you find yourself standing here in 1858, the argument is purely academic. The river is gone. Its natural systems have been utterly overwhelmed. No salmon have been seen in the Thames for at least 30 years. The fishermen who once made their living here have either moved on or been forced to scrape a grim living from the river's polluted margins, hunting for scraps of coal or metal dropped from passing barges. The very word, Thames, has become synonymous with stench and disease. And the city's own system for waste disposal is to blame. For centuries, London relied on a network of small, local rivers and streams to carry away its surface water. The Fleet, the Tyburn, the Walbrook, these were once clear streams. Now they have been covered over, turned into underground sewers that do one thing: they channel rainwater, and increasingly everything else, directly into the heart of the Thames. It's a design flaw on a citywide scale, a fundamental misunderstanding of nature that is about to have catastrophic consequences. The river that once gave London life is now a ticking time bomb, filled with the city's every secret and sin, waiting for the right conditions to reveal itself in all its foul glory. And as you stand there, a bead of sweat tracing a path through the grime on your temple, you can feel the summer air growing warmer, heavier. The fuse has been lit. Section 3. You turn your back on the sorrowful river. The image of that murky, lifeless water burned into your mind. You've seen where the filth ends up, but the question now is, where does it all begin? The journey to answer that takes you away from the grand thoroughfares and into the labyrinth of residential streets. A dense network of brick and slate. Let's imagine you have a home here. It's a tall, narrow terrace house, perhaps in a once respectable neighborhood that is slowly succumbing to the pressures of an overcrowded city. It has a certain charm, with its sash windows and wrought iron railings, but it holds a grim secret, a feature common to nearly every single home in London, from the richest mansion to the poorest slum. The secret is buried, usually in the basement or under the flagstones of a tiny back garden. It is the cesspit. Forget everything you know about modern sanitation. The pipes, the plumbing, the simple, magical act of flushing something away. None of that exists for you here. Your home's entire system for dealing with human waste is, essentially, a brick-lined box buried in the ground. This pit, maybe 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide, is the sole destination for everything your household produces. It's dark, it's damp, and it has been silently, steadily collecting its grim tribute for years. The brickwork is old, porous, and poorly mortared. This isn't a sealed, hygienic tank. It's more like a sieve. Its contents, a thick, toxic sludge, are constantly leaching out, seeping into the surrounding earth, creating a permanent, unseen quagmire beneath your feet. More terrifyingly, this liquid waste migrates through the soil, inevitably finding its way into the very same underground water table from which your local well draws its water. You are, in a very real sense, drinking the filtered remains of your own and your neighbor's sewage. For centuries, this system, while unpleasant, was just about manageable. A single household might take years to fill its cesspit, but this is 1858. The house that was designed for one family now holds 5. Dozens of people are living, cooking, and sleeping within these walls, and they all share the same single, overwhelmed privy in the backyard, which empties into the same, single, overwhelmed cesspit. The pit fills up in months, not years, and when it's full, you can't simply ignore it. The waste backs up, overflowing into your garden, seeping up through your basement floorboards, creating a smell that is no longer a secret, but an aggressive, unavoidable presence in your home. So, what do? You call for the night soil men. These are the city's forgotten key workers, its sanitation department of last resort. Their work is so foul that by law, it can only be performed under the cover of darkness, typically between midnight and 5 in the morning. Imagine the scene. You're woken late at night not by a loud noise, but by a sudden, overpowering intensification of the smell you thought you'd grown used to. Peeking through your curtains, you see a small, horse-drawn cart, its wheels muffled with rags to deaden the sound. A team of 2 or 3 men, their clothes patched and stained, are working by the faint, flickering light of a single lantern. They are the night soil men. Debate continues among social historians about their exact standing in the community. Were they despised outcasts, forever tainted by their profession, or were they viewed as a sort of necessary evil, grudgingly respected for doing a job no one else would touch? Their work is brutally physical. First, they pry up the heavy flagstones covering the pit. The wave of concentrated stench that erupts is staggering, a physical force that makes your eyes water even from the safety of your window. Then, one man, the whole man, is lowered into the pit itself, standing sometimes waist-deep in the filth. He shovels the semi-solid waste into buckets. The other men, the tub men, haul the buckets up and empty them into barrels on the cart. It is grim, back-breaking, and profoundly dangerous work. The men are constantly exposed to disease, and the toxic gases in the pits, the same ones you saw bubbling up in the Thames, could, and often did, suffocate them. And here's the quirky part: this foul-smelling cargo was valuable. It was, in its own way, black gold. The night soil men weren't just disposers of waste, they were collectors of a commodity. They would cart their nightly haul out of the city to depots where it was dried, treated, and sold to farmers as a potent fertilizer known as podret. A crew of night soil men could make a surprisingly good living from London's filth. Far more than a typical laborer, it was a strange, nocturnal economy, a perfect example of the Victorian ability to find profit in the most unlikely of places. It's the ultimate gig economy job, I suppose. Terrible hours, but you're your own boss. But by the 1850s, this ancient system is at its breaking point. There are simply too many people, too many cesspits, and not enough night soil men to empty them all. The cost of having a pit emptied is high, so many landlords and homeowners simply let them overflow. The city is drowning in its own waste. From the ground up, the stench is becoming unbearable, and the demand for a solution, any solution, is growing desperate, and it is this desperation that will lead London to make a fateful decision. An act of supposed progress that will take the localized horror of the overflowing cesspit and turn it into a city-wide, river-borne catastrophe. Section 4. The situation in your home has become untenable. The faint, unpleasant smell from the basement has become a permanent, cloying resident in every room. The overflowing cesspit in the garden is a source of constant anxiety and embarrassment. You've priced the night soil men, and their services are prohibitively expensive. You feel trapped, living in a home that is slowly being consumed by its own filth. And then, you hear whispers of a modern miracle, a device that promises to solve this age-old problem with elegance, efficiency, and the simple, cleansing power of water. It is, of course, the water closet, the flush toilet. This isn't some brand new, untested gadget. Versions of it have been around for decades. Luxury items for the fabulously wealthy. You might have seen one of the ornate early models, perhaps a Brahma toilet, encased in a beautiful polished mahogany cabinet, looking more like a throne than a piece of plumbing. They were complex, sometimes temperamental contraptions, the 19th century equivalent of a smart home device that only half works. But the real turning point came in 1851, at the Great Exhibition in Hyde Park. This was a grand festival of technology and progress, and among the giant telescopes and steam-powered looms, public flushing toilets were installed. For the price of a single penny, visitors could experience this marvel of modern hygiene. It was a sensation. Over 800,000 people queued up, making it one of the most popular attractions of the entire exhibition. The flush toilet had entered the public consciousness. Now, in the mid-1850s, flushed with its public success, The water closet is becoming more accessible. You decide to invest. You purchase a new, ceramic model. It's a thing of beauty, a gleaming white symbol of cleanliness and civilization installed in your home. The first time you use it, it feels like magic. You pull the chain, and with a satisfying rush of water, the problem simply vanishes. Gone. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph over the squalor of daily life. But as you stand there, admiring the pristine bowl, a new, practical question emerges. Where, exactly, has away gone? The water has to go somewhere. Your cesspit is already at capacity. It certainly can't handle the additional 5 or 6 gallons of water that will now be flooding into it with every single flush. It would be overflowing in a matter of days. And this is where you, along with tens of thousands of other Londoners, make a decision that is both perfectly logical and catastrophically flawed. Your house, like most, has a drain that connects to the street, designed to carry rainwater from your roof and gutters away from the property. In the street, that drain connects to a larger, brick-lined tunnel, one of London's ancient sewers. The solution seems brilliantly simple. You hire a plumber. He connects the outflow pipe from your new water closet directly to this rainwater drain. Problem solved. The waste is no longer your problem. It is now the city's problem. Historians question whether this city-wide shift was a well-intentioned public health initiative that simply misunderstood the consequences, or if it was driven by the more cynical economics of property owners. Were they forward-thinking reformers trying to clean up the city's homes? Or were they just landlords who were thrilled to have found a way to bypass the expensive services of the night soil men for good? Whatever the motivation, the result was the same. The Commission of Sewers, the very body in charge of the city's drainage, actually began to mandate it. They ordered the phasing out of cesspits and the connection of all household drains to the main sewer system. Here is the fatal flaw in that grand plan. Remember those old sewers we talked about? The ones like the River Fleet, which had been covered over. They were never meant to transport solid waste. They were designed for rainwater. They were often wide, with flat bottoms and very gentle slopes. When you introduce thick, heavy sewage into such a system, it doesn't flow, it settles. The solid matter sinks to the bottom, creating dams of putrefying sludge, while the liquid waste slowly seeps past. All you have done is move the cesspit from your backyard into the street beneath your feet. London was inadvertently creating a subterranean network of thousands of miles of long, thin, sealed cesspits, festering in the darkness. The decomposing waste released enormous quantities of methane gas, which would build up until it found a vent, sometimes resulting in explosions that blew manhole covers 30 feet into the air. And the final destination for every single one of these overloaded, malfunctioning sewers was the same. Every single pipe, every drain, every channel, ultimately had one outfall. They all pointed directly at the River Thames. Every time you, your neighbors, or anyone in a newly modernized home pulled that satisfying chain, you were personally contributing to a torrent of raw, untreated human waste pouring directly into the river. The old system of cesspits was a nightmare, but at least it was a localized one. This new system was a consolidated, industrial-scale operation for pollution. The Thames had always been sick, but London had just injected it with a fatal overdose. The stage was now perfectly set. The poison was in the water. All that was needed was the right weather to cook it. Now that you have committed this act of supreme, if unintentional, environmental vandalism by connecting your home to the river, let's pause and consider what you truly believe about the world around you. This is crucial. To understand the panic that is about to grip London, you have to understand the fundamental nature of fear in 1858. And your greatest fear, the monster under the bed for every Victorian, is not something you can see or touch. It is the air itself. You believe, with the certainty of a scientific fact, in the Gospel of Miasma. The theory is simple, intuitive, and utterly terrifying. It states that diseases, especially the dreaded cholera, are not spread by contact or by drinking contaminated water. They are spread by inhaling, miasmata, a fancy word for bad air. This isn't just a folk belief. It is the absolute bedrock of mainstream medical and scientific thought. Your doctor believes it, the government believes it, the newspapers preach it, the logic is compelling. Decaying things, like rotting vegetables or raw sewage, produce foul smells. Poor neighborhoods, where disease is rampant, are filled with these foul smells. Therefore, the smell itself must be the vehicle of the disease. A poisonous, invisible vapor that rises from the filth, drifts on the wind, and steals into your lungs to strike you down. So, for you, a bad smell is not a nuisance. It is an assault. It is the palpable presence of death. And the most feared of all miasmatic diseases is cholera. You have lived through its outbreaks. You have seen its work. It is a merciless, brutally swift killer. A person can be healthy at breakfast and dead by supper time. It reduces its victims to hollowed-out shells, and it moves through the city like a phantom, its path seemingly random and its victims chosen without reason. Because you believe in miasma, you see cholera's ghostly hand in every wisp of fog rising from a ditch, in every foul gust of wind from a blocked alleyway. The river, now the recipient of the entire city's waste, is therefore not just a smelly eyesore. It is the single largest miasma factory in the world. It is a slumbering dragon, and its breath is cholera. Now, it's important to know that a few lone voices are beginning to question this. While the great and the good are all looking at the air, a doctor named John Snow has been looking at the water. Just 4 years earlier, in 1854, he investigated a terrifying cholera outbreak in Soho, while his colleagues were busy analyzing wind patterns and sniffing drains. Snow did something radical. He started mapping the deaths. He drew a small map of the neighborhood and put a dot on it for every victim. He quickly saw that the deaths were all clustered around one specific public water pump on Broad Street. He convinced the local authorities, in a moment of sheer desperation, to remove the handle from the pump. The outbreak almost immediately subsided. Snow proved, with a stunning piece of detective work, that cholera was a waterborne disease. But in 1858, you probably think he's a crackpot. His germ theory is a fringe idea, dismissed by the medical establishment as a quaint, unproven notion. How could something invisible in the water be the cause, when you could literally smell the poison in the air? It's a classic case of seeing is believing, or in this case, smelling is believing. You'd rather put your faith in what your own senses are telling you. So, how do you protect yourself? You engage in a constant, low-level war against smells. When you walk outside, you might carry a nosegay, a small bouquet of fragrant herbs like rosemary and lavender, to press to your face when passing a particularly foul area. You might chew on pungent substances like angelica root. In your home, you fight smells with other, stronger smells. You burn coarse brown paper soaked in vinegar. You leave out sources of chloride of lime, a substance with a sharp, acrid scent that scours the air. Your home smells like a cross between a pickle factory and a swimming pool. But you believe this chemical sharpness is the smell of safety. It's your only defense against the invisible killer lurking outside. Even the most brilliant minds of the age are terrified. A few years before our story, the great scientist Michael Faraday, a man who understood the unseen forces of electricity and magnetism better than anyone, took a boat trip on the Thames. He was so appalled that he wrote a furious letter to the Times newspaper. He described the river as an opaque pale brown fluid. In a simple but devastating experiment, he began dropping pieces of his white calling cards into the water. He wrote, "Near the bridges the feculence rolled up in clouds so dense that they were visible at the surface. The cod disappeared from view at less than an inch below the surface." He concluded with a chilling warning, asking if this was a river or a fermenting sewer. He wasn't just offended by the aesthetics, he was terrified of the miasma. The played wind he believed the river was about to exhale. And now, all the pieces are in place. The river is saturated with the waste of millions. The infrastructure designed to protect the city is actively poisoning it. And you, the citizens of London, are armed with a theory of disease that makes you terrified of the very air you breathe. All that is missing is a trigger. All that is needed is a little heat. The long, wet spring is giving way to a warmer, drier spell. the sun is beginning to shine with a little more conviction. You don't know it yet, but you are standing on the precipice of the summer of 1858, a summer that will be remembered for centuries.